Hi AP. Okay, we're going to check our answers and go over them together for worksheet number 2, so please take that out. This is seventh chords and inversions of all types. The first part, you needed to name the type of seventh chord, choosing from the following: major seventh, the dominant seventh, which is major minor seventh, minor seventh, half diminished seventh, or the fully diminished seventh, also known as just the diminished seventh. So for this, you have to look at your clef carefully. There's alto, treble, bass, and tenor clef here, watching your accidentals. These are all root position seventh chords. So the first one, we have an F, A, C, E flat. That's a major triad and a minor seventh. Therefore, it is the major minor seventh, or the dominant seventh. For number 2, we have a D sharp, F sharp, A diminished triad with a C sharp on top, making it a half diminished seventh. Number 3 is bass clef. We're dealing with an E flat, G flat, B flat, D flat. That's a minor triad plus a minor seventh, making it a minor seventh chord. The next one is tenor clef. Look carefully at the pitches. G flat, B double flat, D double flat, F flat. That is a half diminished seventh. The next one, treble clef, C sharp, E, G, B flat. That is a diminished triad. And because of the B flat, we have a fully diminished or diminished seventh chord. The next one, we have alto clef. Looks like E, G sharp, B, D sharp, making it a major triad plus a major seventh. So we have a major seventh chord. The next one is bass clef, B flat, D, F, A flat, major triad, minor seventh. There's your major minor seventh chord, or your dominant seventh chord. The next one, C sharp, E, G sharp, B. Minor triad, minor seventh. So it's your minor seventh chord. The next one, alto clef, F, A flat, C flat, E double flat. That is a diminished seventh chord, or a fully diminished seventh chord. And the last of this set, we have bass clef, E sharp, G sharp, B, D sharp. And hopefully you came up with a half diminished seventh. For the next part, you actually had to construct in 4 different clefs the seventh chord that they are requesting. The first one in treble clef is constructing a dominant seventh chord given the root. The root is B flat. So for dominant seventh chords, we need to make a major triad and a minor seventh. There's our dominant seventh chord. We actually can call that a B flat dominant seventh chord. The next one is an alto clef. We need to construct a half diminished seventh given the root. The root is A. Let's build first and then go back. Half diminished, we're looking at a diminished triad. That's A, C, E flat. And then we can leave the G as is, because in a half diminished seventh chord, we have a diminished triad and a minor seventh. For the next one, bass clef, our root is G sharp, and we need to construct a minor seventh. Let's make our minor triad. That would be G sharp, B, D sharp. And then we need an F sharp up here. For the one in tenor clef, we need to construct a major 7 chord given the root. The root is D. If you need to write that in, go ahead. Tenor clef's always a little tricky. Let's build. D, F sharp, A, C sharp would give us a major triad and a major 7th. Okay, so hopefully you did okay with that. Moving right along, for the next part, we have to name the type of 7th chord and indicate the inversion. As in the example, we're going to choose from major, major minor, minor, half diminished, or diminished. So in the example, you can see what you want to maybe do is figure out the root by building your superimposed thirds. So this can head up there. And we know that the root is a B flat. And we're dealing with a major minor or dominant 7th chord. And it's in third inversion. Third inversion, remember, for 7th chords is the figured bass number of 4-2 or just a 2. And if you can see, the A flat is the lowest note. So the figured bass would be, let's say, 4-2. So we can travel up from the lowest note, which shows us where the 4 is. And we can travel up 2 from the lowest note, and that's how we get our 4-2 third inversion. Okay, so for the next one, we're in treble clef. Rearrange your triads. Looks like we have C, E flat, G flat, and B double flat. I can do 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 4, 2, like so, meaning that this is a triad in second inversion because my G flat is in the bass, which means I'll need figured bass symbols of, you guessed it, 4, 3. That's one way of figuring it out. The other way of figuring out the figured bass is to simply count up from the lowest note and see what you have. So the lowest note is a G flat, and up from there, the B flat, B double flat would be the 3, and the C would be the 4. But we're not quite done yet. If we wanted to, we have to make sure to put the slashes or the flat signs through some of those numbers. But we don't need to do that. We just need to figure out the quality of the 7th chord and what inversion it's in. So C, E flat, G flat is a diminished triad and a diminished 7th, making it a fully diminished 7th chord or a diminished 7th chord. So I will simply do that, and I'm looking at second inversion. For the next one, we're in alto clef. I've got a C, I've got an E flat, I've got a flat, and I have an F. The F appears to be the root. If I take this down here, I have a 7th chord in root position. So the F's in the root, F is the root, and I'm dealing with a minor triad, F, A flat, C, E flat, and a minor 7th, making it a minor 7th chord. And since the root is an octave higher, this 7th chord is in first inversion. First inversion of 7th chords, you'll recall that we have a 6-5 in the bass, which appears to make sense if we look at this triad if we look at the 7th chord right here, because the lowest note, here's where we could get the 6 from, and there's where we could get the 5 from, indicating it is at first inversion. In the next example, we have tenor clef. Find your notes carefully. D, E, B flat, G. That looks like a diminished triad and a minor 7th, which means it's a half diminished 7th chord, but it's not in root position. Let's count up from the bass. Looks like 6-5 right here, 6, 5. So we know that 6-5 is first inversion. So this is a half diminished 7th chord in first inversion. For the next one, we are on to treble clef. Does not appear to be a root position 7th chord. Rearrange your tones. I'm looking at an F sharp, A, C sharp, E. From root 3rd, 5th up to 7th. Okay. 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 4, 2. Hopefully you have that phone number memorized. That's the inversion hotline. And what note is in the bass? A C sharp. So if you know that C sharp's in the bass of the F and F sharp is the root, then you can tell that this 7th chord happens to be in second inversion. What type of 7th chord is it? It's a minor triad plus a minor 7th, making it a minor 7th chord in second inversion. Our figured bass, if we needed to supply that, would be this 4-3. And if we look above the lowest note, we see the 4 and we see the 3. For the next one, we have alto clef. This looks a little different, not in root position. I'm looking at a C sharp. I'm looking at an A sharp. I'm also looking at an F sharp. And an E sharp. Interesting. I've rearranged them into superimposed thirds. I've just figured out that the F sharp is my root because I've rearranged these into superimposed thirds. And F sharp, A sharp, C sharp, E sharp is a major triad plus a major 7th, making it a major 7th chord. And this happens to be in third inversion. Why? Well, because the E sharp is in the bass. And that's third inversion is where the 7th of the chord is the lowest note. For the next one, we are on to bass clef. We've got a C, E flat, G flat, A flat. That appears to be a major triad and a minor 7th, making it a major minor 7th chord, but it's not root position. It happens to be in first inversion because the C is in the bass. For the next one, we have treble clef. We've got a G, B flat, F, and D flat. Okay, right now these are not arranged in superimposed thirds, so I need to take care of that. So it looks as if my root is going to be G, then a B flat, then a D flat, and then an F. Wonderful. D flat's in the bass. That's going to be a second inversion. 7th chord. And G, B flat, D flat is a diminished triad and a minor 7th, making this a half diminished 7th chord in second inversion. For the next one, I'm in tenor clef. I've got A, B, D sharp, and F sharp. Let's rearrange those into superimposed thirds. B, D sharp, F sharp, A. I've now discovered that the B is the root. What's the lowest note? F sharp. If F sharp is the lowest note and B is the root of this seventh chord, that means that this seventh chord is in second inversion, and B, D sharp, F sharp, A is going to give me the quality of the seventh chord as a dominant seventh, or major minor seventh. The last one in this set, we are in bass clef. Let's figure out the tones of the seventh chord: F, A flat, C flat, D. The D would move over here for superimposed thirds, making the root of this seventh chord the D. D, F, A flat is a diminished triad. D to C flat is a diminished seventh. Therefore, this seventh chord happens to be a fully diminished seventh chord, or a diminished seventh chord, but not in root position. This is in third inversion. And why is it in third inversion? Well, the lowest note happens to be a C flat. C flat is the seventh of the seventh chord. When the seventh of the seventh chord is the lowest note, the seventh chord is said to be in third inversion, which is 4-2. If we needed to get technical and supply a figured bass, we could see the 4 above the lowest note, and we could see the 2 above the lowest note. So hopefully you did okay with this. Let's move right on to the last section here. We are going to complete the chords as indicated by the figured bass. Okay, so not too complicated at all. We just have to look at the lowest note and the figured bass and supply the missing tones. So we have treble clef G. We're looking at 4 above the lowest note, which is the G. That's going to be a C. I don't want to do anything to that C. I just want to draw it because there's no sign or symbol either next to or through the 4. However, there is a flat sign before the 3. So let's travel up 3 from the lowest note. 1, 2, 3. We land right there, and I will need to flatten that. So we have 3 tones of our seventh chord triad. We need to find out which one is missing and supply it. It's not going to be written in the figured bass. Okay, this happens to be abbreviated seventh chord figured bass symbols, 4, 3. So let's figure out what's missing. We have a G, a B flat, and a C. Looks like the E is missing to make my superimposed thirds. So then I would simply draw the E, but I cannot draw the E below the G. The G is the lowest note, which means it would have to go up here. So if we look carefully at this seventh chord, we can see that we have followed the figured bass, and that 4, 3 is a seventh chord that is in second inversion. And when it's in second inversion, the G needs to be in the bass, or the 5th of that seventh chord, which it clearly is. So for the next one, we have to alter the 3 notes that we're going to draw above that lowest note. Then we can determine the inversion. But it's quite simple to determine the inversion just by looking at the figured bass, because when you see 4-2, you should automatically know at this point that 4-2 is a seventh chord that's in third inversion. So let's travel up 6 from the lowest note, and we land on a C. Let's travel up 4 from the lowest note, and we'll land on an A. Travel up 2 from the lowest note, and that brings us to our F. Now there's slashes through all of those, which means we need to raise those up 1 semitone. So I'll need to put a C sharp here, an A sharp here, and an F sharp here. The 4-2, as I said earlier, indicates the seventh chord in third inversion. So if we wanted to spell this, we could go F sharp, A sharp, C sharp, E. And you see how the E is the lowest note. 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 4, 2. And believe it or not, these figured bass symbols with these slashes and flat signs and everything actually tell us the quality of the seventh chord. So if we go back to the first one, the C, E, G, B flat is a dominant seventh in inversion. It's a major minor seventh chord. The example we just worked on in bass clef, F sharp, A sharp, C sharp, E, is also a major minor seventh, or the dominant seventh chord. For the next one, treble clef, we'll travel up from the F, 6 tones, land on the D. We'll travel up from the F, 5 tones, land on the C. You know that 6-5 is the 7th chord in first inversion. We could write that so we don't forget. Which means that the 3rd is in the bass. So the F is the 3rd. So if the F is the 3rd, then D must be my root. And there's the completed 7th chord. What tone is missing? We have the D, we have the F, we have the C, we need the A. And that completes this 7th chord in first inversion. What's the quality of the 7th chord? What type of 7th chord is it? Hopefully you said minor 7th, because we're dealing with a minor triad and a minor 7th. In the next one, we're in bass clef. The lowest note is a B, and our figured bass is /6, 4, 3. Let's travel up 6 from the lowest note, and we land on a G. But it's not a G because we have to raise it up 1 semitone because of the slash. G sharp. Now we'll travel up 4 from that, land on the E, travel up 3 from it, and land on the D. This is an example of a 7th chord that used full figured bass. And the reason for that is they can't exclude the 6 here because they want it raised 1 semitone. So instead of seeing just the 4-3, you see the /6, 4-3. And you recall that this must be a 7th chord in second inversion because the 4-3 is in the figured bass. Second inversion, you know, the 5th is in the bass. So if B is the 5th, then the 7th must be the D, the 3rd must be the G sharp, and the root must be the E. Therefore, making this a major minor 7th chord, or dominant 7th chord in second inversion. And for the last example, we have treble clef. Looks like a root position 7th chord. I know right away it's root position because I see the 7. So let's go up 7 from the lowest note. There's our 7th of this 7th chord. We don't need to do anything to it because it's just a 7 all by itself. We do need to put the 7, however, because if we didn't put the 7, then the implication would be that it's just going to be a triad. Okay. Travel up 3 from the lowest note, right there. This sharp sign alone, as you recall, means that we need to raise the tone that's a 3rd above the lowest note, 1 semitone, so I'm going to get my G sharp. And the missing tone is the 5. That's unnecessary to put in the figured bass. We know that it's a root position 7th chord. And we're looking at E, G sharp, B, D. Same as the previous example in bass clef. Only this is root position. So we're dealing with a dominant 7th or a major minor 7th in root position. So hopefully you did okay with this, and we'll be back for more worksheets pretty soon. Thanks AP, thanks for watching.